What's up guys, Rainey here from the Garage Channel, and today we're going to be covering should I be running traction bars and or ladder bars depending on your preference. Let's get into it.
The negative 81 is...
Oh my God.
So when you start modifying a truck, whether it's lifting it, leveling it, lowering it, bigger wheels and tires alone, or you start making more power if you have a diesel or if you're building an EcoBoost or an LS, whatever it is, at some point someone's going to bring up that you should probably start looking into ladder bars or traction bars. More specifically, most people run traction bars. The two differences are traction bars pivot on the axle and the frame, so you have 2 points for them to pivot versus one. Ladder bars tend to be solid mounted to the axle and then have a pivot point on the frame, so it is going to in turn ride a little bit rougher. It's going to help with sway of the truck. It acts as a sway bar for the rear. It also puts tension on the rear to help just hold everything more centered, more rigid from, it's mainly more for, like, I wouldn't say off-road use, but like truck pulls, dirt drags, you know, like anything we're gonna be using a lot of speed and also on a looser surface. Like typically, like if you were to do a lot of sand racing or whatever, it helps because it helps you with rear body roll versus a traction bar where like a truck like the K350 or my truck having 8 to 10 inches of lift, you're now putting an axle 10 inches below unless you do a leaf spring swap to a different length of leaf springs or blocks. You're putting the axle that much further down and it has that much more room to walk left to right, especially Wisconsin's roads where the roads are beautiful. You know that, Cole. They're rough. I mean, you hit a bump and that axle, moves forward, backwards a little bit, but when you're on 40s and a lift, it just makes it that much worse. So all it does is it holds the entire rear end in place. It does not let it roll forward, it doesn't roll up, it doesn't roll down, it doesn't shimmy left and right. It just tightens everything up in the rear enough to where you prevent drive shaft issues, rear alignment issues. That's why you see a lot of the trucks that are lifted really tall and don't have some of these options tend to have the ass end hang out one way, and that's because everything just shifts and there's no sort of supporting bars to hold those axles back in place. They have numerous variants of it, and I believe we cover that separately. So does the length and the mounting position matter for traction and ladder bars? It does, and it's more common on pull trucks to see this. Typical lifted truck, the drive shaft will be the same length as where it goes to the length of where the drive shaft pivots going into the transmission, transfer case, depending on what you have. And that is so when the truck compresses the rear suspension and your drive shaft goes up, it pivots at the same angle as the traction ladder bars, because if it doesn't, it starts to create binding issues throughout the entire suspension cycle. And having it shorter or longer, you either start losing benefits of it or it doesn't benefit you at all. So if it's too short, you're essentially gonna be fighting the traction bar. It's gonna be angled up more and you're gonna be trying to push a metal bar up, and that we all know it doesn't work. Versus when you have it pivoting at the same angle as the drive shaft, it lets the suspension cycle, but also keeping everything tight and not having like pushing the axle back as it goes up or pulling the axle forward as the suspension comes back to normal. If it's too long, it can bind up and pull the axle forward, it can pull it backwards, and it gets to a point where it's not really needed. And then you start getting to the way of, your 4-link fronts, your radius arms, stuff like that, or even your torsion key drop brackets. So yes, it does matter. Mounting positions matter as well. Typically you'll see traction bar, ladder bar mounts on the bottom of the axle, just how they mount. I'm not a scientist on why they do that with all their geometry and math.
He goes by pure animal instinct.
This way, lads!
But it's the most common way. I know Flight Fab does it, BDS, McGoy's, Hazley, I know all of them do that. So it's the typical go-to. It's the easiest way to mount them if you do a bolt-on bracket for the rear axles for the traction bars. Or if you do weld on, they weld on to the bottom. There's a bunch of shit on the top of your axle anyways. Why add more to it? Yes, so it does matter. And then a big typical one is, does it affect ride quality? And the answer is, it depends. So you have, like the K350 has recoil traction bars where you have a tube inside of a tube that is held together with a spring in it that has a lot of tension. I don't like it personally, just based off of personal preferences. I'm not into it. I would rather have a solid mount. But you do get to keep a little bit more ride quality than you would if you were to go solid mounted, like Flight Fabs or any sort of like your generic typical traction bar. They are solid mounted. It's just a piece of metal tube with 2 typically Delron or poly filled bushings on the end, and those ride like shit. Anyone that tells you they don't probably is a liar and or figured it out. But you also have like McGaughy's, who has your traction bar that comes off the axle to a pivot knuckle that it'll let you free flex it until a certain point, and then that piece comes up and it locks onto the frame and it makes it solid. So, you know, you have your recoil with a spring inside the tube that pulls and pushes. You have your McGaughy's that pivots and then bottoms out on the frame, and then it's solid mount. Or you have solid mount, which rides a little bit stiffer, but then you have less moving parts, less breakage, less maintenance. I hate doing maintenance, so I just did the solid mount, and I prefer that look. So I'm sure there are numerous other options out there. I'm sure there's cantilever, this, that, and other doohickeys, but those are the big 3. Typically what we see is we do a lot of McGaughy's and the BDS recoils. People love them. The recoils do really great with towing. The McGaughy's do great with towing. Mine do really well with towing. It actually helps make my truck not ride like a brick shit house. But every vehicle is different, and we can definitely help you if you're looking for traction bars. Just give us a call. The last question is typically, should I get some? And that really depends on what you're doing, what you're driving, what you plan on doing with it after you lift it, all that. I tow with my truck. I don't tow a lot, but when I do, it's typically a camper or a car trailer or something that's not like a garden trailer. So at 8 to 10 inches lift on 40s, towing a camper, especially if we go out into the hills, it helps a lot. How much I couldn't tell you, but it does. You do noticeably feel the difference of the axle not wanting to pull left, pull right, pull forward. It locks it in place, makes it, it makes it ride a little bit worse, but you don't feel like the ass end's not completely there with you. If you're going to build a pull truck, you obviously should, because if you're going to be launching in the dirt, or if you guys do it in concrete, I know that's kind of a thing too, depending on where you are. You're going to definitely want that, because it is a huge shock to the rear suspension to try and hold itself back. It's just going to try and fight its way forward, especially on a coil sprung truck. On a coil sprung truck, you get a little bit luckier because you have typically a 4-link rear that holds all that back, more so for your leaf sprung trucks that tend to have a lot of the axle wrap issues. Even drag racing, same exact instance. Yeah, so it depends on your application. I mean, you can get it just because they look cool. I definitely agree with that. I love mine. Depending, the McGaughy's have face plates on them. They have stainless face plates. Flight Fabs have stainless face plates as well, plus whatever powder coat color you could imagine. It does help fill out the rear, if you have your 4-link front or a radius arm and then you have nothing in the rear, it does help fill out the rear, and it adds to your suspension colorways if you want. But typically for just use, it's for preventing axle wrap. So, if you like to hot dog it around in your hot rod, it's probably not a bad idea to get it. I think that about covers it. Let us know if we covered it, and if you have any more questions or any advice on it and you think we should tell other people, feel free to give us a comment and let us know what we should do. Thanks.